I'm pretty excited about the retreat that's coming up. I love the title, Toward Belonging, because I feel like there's been so much belonging that's been lost over the last, decade, but certainly the last several years, and that people are longing to belong. And so I'm glad we're working in that direction. I'm also excited about the venue. We went to the Boulder Hot Springs for my birthday, and the whole retreat just kind of fell into place. It was like, this is it. This is the spot. And part of what I love about it is it's extremely well maintained, but old and simple in ways.
And funky.
And then it's got this great benefit of having an outdoor pool that has all the minerals in it. And then they've got the indoor hot tubs and cold plunge on the women's side. It's wonderful, feels really healthy. And the idea of sitting in that dining room and having a large group of people and we're eating good, healthy food together. And I really look forward to it.
And very cool meeting rooms with
very
lots of interesting decor.
So, very historical and unusual.
Historical and hysterical.
Both.
I'm looking forward to being with more human beings again, like we used to. I've been in a lot of circles and communities and groups, and these days it's felt like everyone's gone into hiding and gone off the rails. Sally said yesterday, we kind of have to get back on the horse, and it's like, get back on the horse, get back into groups, get back into face-to-face with people, to find out that they're just human beings, and we've all been living together in a surreal world, and we're not scary, and we're good. So, so that's the first thing is just want to surround myself with people and get a sense that people are good.
And it's really good to remember that, but not just remember it, but actually experience the deep goodness of people.
Right.
And we've had that experience before in these kinds of retreats.
That's always what dialogue work has been about, was getting real face-to-face experience with other people and to realize how good they are. And even people really different from you, come to love them. It was like I used to say about dialogue, it's the only place where I could really have the experience of feeling in love with other human beings. And, now more than ever, craving that experience.
I wanted to talk about a little bit that extends on that about what true belonging, kind of what a vision of true belonging is. And that is that, like, you can belong to a group that shares a set of beliefs, as long as a person doesn't be too different. There is that feeling of belonging. But the more we can express of who we actually are, and then find people who accept that, even if they don't fully agree with everything that we think or feel, that they have a sense of our humanness, and they respect that we've had a lifetime of different experiences. And like you said, and feel on a visceral level the goodness, then that represents a deeper level of belonging, maybe than most people. I know for me, there were a number of special situations, workshop situations often, where I felt like I belonged like I had never belonged in my whole life, where it was deeply okay to be who I was. And the capacity to grant that to other people as well. And that was healing and empowering and extremely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, there's a belonging people settle for. It's a provisional belonging or fake belonging or fraudulent belonging or whatever, where it depends on do I agree with this ideology, or am I willing to go along with these rules, or do I have to keep my mouth shut or about certain things? And I understand why we sometimes have put ourselves in those situations, but I don't think it honors who we are, and it doesn't honor the capabilities of human beings, that we are capable of so much more than that. We're capable of true belonging, where people get to show up as themselves in full acceptance of themselves and love of themselves in a room with people that can be, some of whom can be very, very different, and yet we cherish each other and love each other for the differences, not despite the differences, because we see the strength that a group can have when it's got so many different viewpoints looking at the same thing. So that's what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in hiding any part of myself to be with other human beings, but I am interested in being with other people that are different from me, because I really value what they have to bring.
I think for me, that's been part of what's been amazing and healing for me about being in a relationship with someone who is so neurologically different from me, and finding out that those differences actually contribute to my life. They contribute a piece that it fills in a place that I hadn't even been aware of. So, for example, like the way you really love routine, and I'm such a, kind of like wild card. I'll do, every day would look really different if I didn't live with you.
Mhm.
But it's been scattered. The downside is it's been so nice to kind of have this other person who brings a need for sameness and routine. And I kind of have relaxed into that. And now I actually feel paradoxically, in a lot of ways, more creative,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't have to be dealing with, well, what am I going to do in 10 minutes? Or what am I going to have for dinner? So that difference has been really actually very nourishing to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When you free up RAM from deciding all of these other things that you can just handle with routine, you now have capability online for creativity and the life of the mind and other projects. So
Yeah. And on the other hand, you have never been stuck in a rut in living with me. I know that.
that's true.
You've reported it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's challenging, but it's also a different kind of nurturing and blessing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you thought much, Tim, about the experience of being in a group as opposed to sort of doing for healing work, doing one-on-one or just us with a couple? What do you see as the benefits and or drawbacks of having the format of working with a group of people?
Because I think differently. Um, I've actually spent time thinking about the question, what are other people for? Um, and my ready answer to that is other people can see things that I don't see. They have different experiences and different perceptive qualities, and different paths and different interests. And so um, it's a way that human beings seem really useful to me, is that they see things I don't see. I like to think I see everything and know everything and understand everything, but the sad truth of it is I don't. And so having other people in the room that can point out, you missed this point. Um, you're not quite seeing this. You don't have access to this whole thing I know all about. That's very useful to me, even if it is sometimes confrontive and embarrassing to my ego that wants to think it knows everything. So I appreciate that. And one person is great. Having just Sally and her very different viewpoint is great, though often annoying. But
Did you say annoying?
yeah, but but a whole room full of people. There's
It's
something
really annoying.
Well, no, in fact, it's less personal and somehow feels more gentle with a
Yeah.
room full of people.
Yeah.
It becomes okay to not know everything. You couldn't possibly know everything these other dozens of people know. So yeah, I like that experience.
Yeah.
How about you?
I think it's really helpful for people who maybe haven't ever disclosed parts of themselves, experiences they've had, trauma, or just experiences, feelings about things. When somebody else in the group, maybe they're more extroverted, maybe they've had just different experiences that have given them a piece of healing in a certain area. When they express themselves, I think it's easier for people to kind of relax and go, I'm not the only one. I'm not the only one that has had that experience or had that thought or wondered about that. And that can be comforting, and it can also be really empowering, because once one person says, yeah, I've had a problem with anger, or I've had a sense of being afraid and I didn't know why, then other people start to feel the courage to chime in and say, me too, and that was hard. I think it's probably one of the biggest healing things about 12-step groups is people come into a room full of other people who have admitted that they have an addiction, and the relief that one is not alone is so huge. And also seeing these are very decent people. These are decent people that have struggled with the same thing I've struggled with. Just dispels a huge amount of shame. I went to a workshop many, many, many years ago on facilitating groups and why groups are important. And I remember that the leader of the group pointed out that we tend to get wounded in groups, and therefore there's a great power for healing in groups where we can relax and actually experience that we're not different. We're certainly different in certain ways, but we're not different in other ways that we were afraid we were really different. So, yeah, I think groups are very powerful.
And right now, to the extent, we live in a world that feels very polarized, and there's a lot of estrangement and a lot of kind of blame and argument going on, and so a lot of people have been kind of traumatized from loss of belonging, and to me, it's been blows to our sense of attachment. And to me, there's nothing that builds a stronger attachment to be able to show up with who you are, what you think, what you want, what you need, how you feel, and the other person doesn't go away.
Mm.
And imagine you're in a room full of people and you show up as your true self and they don't go away. And in fact, by the end of it, they love who you are showing up as being. You want to reclaim your sense of attachment to humanity. That's the way to do it.
Yeah, and that reminds me about something I've been thinking a lot about that when you gather with a group of real human beings, rather than, celebrities or influencers or, you know, airbrushed experts on different things who look so put together. You show up in a group of real human beings, it's it's so wonderful and beautiful to relax and see the variety, the true diversity of human beings, rather than this little advertised option of what it means to be successful and to have all of your stuff together and be smart and beautiful and rich, and all those things get blown out because you get to be with a group of real human beings.
And it separates all that diversity and difference from judgment. It's not good or bad. It separates that out. So
Right.
you can have all this diversity and still those are good people. Well, it seems like we should talk about the word dialogue, because we've in the past led a number of dialogue circles, we've called them. And but it's not people sitting around just talking, or the experience a lot of people have in meetings. It's not just talking, and it's not argument, and it's not that. It's something else. And it arises from, we've both been influenced by Scott Peck and the different drum and that work that he did with the Foundation for Community Encouragement, community building workshops. And then also David Bohm, the physicist who developed a way for human beings to get together in a room, that people that were really different, and talk to each other and actually listen to each other, because he was having trouble in his life as a quantum physicist being heard and understood by people, because he was questioning the dominant paradigm. Dialogue it operates out of a few kind of basic precepts or rules. Do you want to talk about the basic rules?
Sure. I mean, one of the basic rules is that we enter not as equals, interestingly, but as colleagues. So we don't try to make everybody all the same. We expect very different skill sets, very different personalities. Everybody isn't equal at all, but they're all valuable because they're all seen as colleagues. So that's one principle. Another one is that it's both important to absolutely be clear about what one's beliefs are, one's stand, one's position is with regard to whatever we're talking about. But at the same time, to learn to use soft language, or language that allows for space for people to have other points of view and stands. And we do that by doing what's called suspending one's assumptions, where you take your assumptions, your beliefs, your experiences, and you don't let go of them, but you suspend them and look through underneath in that space after having suspended your assumptions, and really see and hear very deeply what other people's experience and expertise and biases and beliefs are, and thereby get more of a 365-degree view of what human experience is with regard to whatever we're talking about, to anger or to love or to the state of the cosmos. And so those are two main principles.
The end result of that being accessing group wisdom.
Right. And not only just the sum of the parts. So I was going to talk also about the stages of community or group development or dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
So in the first stage, people come together and they just want to feel like they're included, like it's okay for me to be here. I'm not going to get attacked physically or otherwise. I'm safe here. These people are gonna work with, and I'm going to work to create a sense of inclusion. Scott Peck used the word pseudo community, but I never liked that because it felt like it wasn't real, but it is real. It's a real stage in the process. So the first stage is just helping everybody kind of settle in and feel like, okay, I'm here. And
also
then,
called the honeymoon period.
well, that could be
Mm-hmm.
part of it. Yeah.
I've heard it called that.
We see all the sameness about all of us and acknowledge that and go, oh, good, I'm around like-minded people.
Right.
Who would sign up for a workshop like this.
Right.
And then once that happens and there's a certain level of comfort, then people start being courageous enough to say, well, I think this, and then somebody else goes, no, that's not how it is at all. And we kind of go into a period of, I'd say, necessary and inevitable trying to convince other people or fix other people. Like if somebody says something about their wounding or their situation, people start trying to offer aid, which is all of this is perfectly human, but it's not what actually leads to a deeper level. So we go through a period of that, and Scott Peck called it chaos. I can't remember what David Bohm called it. Storming is another word where it gets a little rocky, but we're still maintaining a sense of inclusion. And then this third stage is just, it can be hugely relieving and also wrenching. So the third stage, Scott Peck describes as the emptying stage, where people start realizing, oh, we've got really big differences here. And
I don't know everything.
My attempts to fix and make everybody happy, those aren't working.
Mm-hmm.
And we're all in the muck together. And it's probably the most challenging stage.
Mm-hmm.
Anger doesn't work. Pleading the victim position doesn't work. Nothing's working.
All of my usual tricks and tools fail.
Right. Yeah. I do have this ego that's really good for balancing the checkbook and really terrible at figuring out how to relate to people. And then some magic begins and people start to empty things out. And they say, I can see how my prejudice about this topic is actually triggering old stuff for me, and I need to get beyond that. Or I can see how I've really had an investment in this because I thought it wasn't okay for me to be this way, and so I was invested in not showing that, but actually that's not helping. And the group as a whole becomes a safe container for people to let go of some of those assumptions, not all of them, but some of the assumptions that may have been felt very dear and protective, but were actually blocking going to a deeper place and allowing true difference, healthy conflict, healthy putting oneself out there, not having to be vicious, either in how you do it or how people respond. And then with grace, and I say that very seriously because it's one of those experiences in life that we can't make happen. We can't force it to happen. We can allow it to happen. And in the last stage, which Scott Peck calls true community, where we would say we start to forge a container together to hold, to make it safe to deeply belong. And we don't know if we'll get there or not in this workshop. I know there'll be tons of learning, but that,
But when you get there, you feel it. It's real. And
palpable.
it has felt to me like a presence is in the room that's not usually there.
Yeah.
So.
And all along the way, we have moments of that.
Yeah.
And lots of times, as people relax, we have huge laughter.
Yeah.
All along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, you loop through the stages, and then you go back, and then you loop, and and eventually you'll get there, and you'll go, we got here, and then you'll slip back, and then you got to,
So it's a wonderful, and I would say for the people who don't need to be totally rational, it can feel magical because we don't know exactly how to get there. So we go on an adventure together. And along the way, we're going to offer practice of skills in smaller groups to begin with, and couples or dyads or triads, but we'll be sharing as a whole group as well every day. And so, it's a really, really rich and somewhat at times can be very challenging.
Mm-hmm.
And so we want to let people know that there will be times when it feels really challenging. And yet there's the promise. And I've never been in a group that never got to that place, although I've heard about groups that never got to that place. Yeah. And I've been in groups where it got very deep and profound, so much so that it almost felt like time stopped. And there was just this sense of deep, for lack of a better term, the loving spirit entered the room. If you're a Christian, Christ entered the room and it opened things up. It becomes a sacred space where people can feel the preciousness of one another and themselves also very much.
You used the phrase soft language a little while ago.
Yeah.
And by soft language, you mean we begin to put away kind of our normal pronouncing how it is way of talking about ourselves and the world, and start adding in my experience, or here's how I see it, or as far as I can see, added things. But I noticed I really hate the phrase soft language.
Oh, yeah.
There's nothing soft at all about it. I would call it vulnerable speaking.
Yeah.
And vulnerability is not for sissies.
No.
People, we've been taught to think vulnerability is like weak and emotional. And it's like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Vulnerability is strength. It's mastery. It's the ability to show up. It's really the acquisition of a skill that's useful absolutely everywhere you go. And dialogue isn't just something you end up doing in groups of a whole bunch of strangers.
Right.
Dialogue is something we do on a daily basis. It's the basis.
Right.
We don't even think about it. It's just the basis of how we relate to each other.
Right.
We're always having to go, here's a different viewpoint, a very different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
I have to question this assumption I'm operating out of. I have to give up. I have to empty out. All of the steps that you'll learn in a dialogue weekend give you access to your primary relationships or all your relationships.
So in fact, we just did it because you brought up that I used a phrase that doesn't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
And in really listening to you, it's like, I'm really glad you made that correction and definition change. It's like it's not soft. It's powerful.
Right.
And
It's
And
truthful. It's honest.
yeah,
Because when I do say something about the world, it is my experience. It
right,
is my opinion. It is how I'm seeing it right now. That's
right.
all it is.
And
So,
that's all it is.
yeah.
But you get to have that
Hmm.
in a clear and powerful way,
Yeah.
without having a stance. It involves both taking a stand or having a position, but not imposing that position on everybody else. And so the language does begin to change. People start to develop skills to invite other, in fact, be inviting. This is my experience, and it's been really powerful for me, but I want to hear about other people too, because I just have this little part of the lens, where
Right.
this great, um, beautiful gem that has all these different facets on it that are all individual, very individual, but they're all part of a larger view. And so as people experience that, their language changes. And sometimes it's helpful to just be very clear. Oh, that kind of language shuts out the possibility for other people. And I don't want to shut out other people. I want to invite them in.
Right.
Man, this just seems so potentially so helpful. We're hearing about so many families that have gotten divided on any number of social or political positions on all kinds of things, and it's wrenching.
Hmm.
And I think it's really important for people to have an experience of what the potential is, to have a deep experience that amazing differences don't have to be gotten rid of, to have love bridge the gap, and to deeply value and cherish other people, even if they're on the opposite side of whatever the issue is.
Right.
And to then get deeper understanding even of those issues. So rich, but also so hopeful, because I think so many people are just at wit's end with pieces of their families that have gotten split off, and they can't seem to, even one-on-one, manage to have civil discourse or any discourse.
Right.
And so the idea that we're trying to help people have a deep experience, you don't have to agree with everything or everybody to still feel like you can belong, that there's a deeper truth and glue that can hold people together through the hard times of conflict, and not just tolerate people, which feels so hard, but in fact embrace them right where they are and
Right.
feel embraced right where one is. And so that I'm so happy that it just touches me very deeply that we could be helpful to people in giving them that kind of experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
There's great need right now.
there is great need right now. Back in the day, way back in the day, when I was just a budding 20-something, there was a whole movement of things that were called encounter groups or truth telling, I can't remember, radical honesty groups that were, for some people, they held some benefit, but for other people, they were incredibly harsh and kind of like telling the truth wasn't telling the truth with any skill or sensitivity to how that so-called truth might land, and they were often damaging. And so for anybody who has trepidation about being confronted or embarrassed in a group, we have some some things that are kind of safeguards for that, which is not to say that any of us have to be perfect, and which is not to say that there may be some feelings that get hurt, but there's also the possibility when somebody misspeaks or speaks in a harsh way for repair, which can also be a very valuable experience for people to have, that even if somebody makes a mistake and is overly harsh or confrontive in some way that's painful, that repair is possible.
Mhm.
We don't all have to go into a cotton box and hide from everybody to try to avoid being hurt. That we can actually, that we're all actually have resources, and especially in a group where there are clearly loving presences available to say, let's slow this down. Let's stop for a second. Let's go into silence. And so silence is one of those really powerful tools where we just stop the action and say, let's just go into silence and ask ourselves some questions about what's going on inside of us and calm ourselves down perhaps, or see where maybe we misspoke, or where we're getting hurt and we need to say that's hurting and I need it to be different. So there's that. There's also a principle that we use in the large group work, which is that you always have the right to pass, that nobody's going to be put on the hot seat and have to respond. It's like, no, you get to notice what your own sense is of when you're ready to speak. And we'll do some processes where we'll go around in the circle, or we'll have a talking stick or whatever. But you never have to respond. It's part of the ethic, part of the norm that Tim and I will hold very clearly, is that no one is forced to speak. And that way you can take your time and see when you're ready and see when it's called for. Very often somebody will say something that you don't even need to speak. You can just say, I really resonated with what so-and-so said, and that's all I need to say.
And very often you don't really know what you want to say, and then someone else will say something, you go, oh, that inspires me. Here's how I think about that.
Right, right, exactly. So we don't force a process on people.
So that's in the large group, and it's easier to achieve in the large group. How about if we cut into smaller groups or paired shares or that kind of thing?
Well, I think the right to pass needs to be in place.
Yeah.
Knowing if you pass on something, you may be losing an opportunity for something.
Right.
But often there's a different way of approaching it too, which is, I want to pass on that question, but I want to talk for the same amount of time about why I don't want to respond to that question.
That's a nice way.
So it's a different way of responding, but not responding to the thing that doesn't feel like you're ready to respond to or work on.
How about the opposite concern of people talking too much?
Well, that always happens. We all have to learn kind of how to operate in a group, and when you haven't been part of a large group. And also, we acknowledge most people are aching to be heard and aching for their story to be heard. And so there's a way that there will be times when people talk too much. And then if that happens a lot with several people, then we've got some fun things to pull out of the bag. We've got an exercise called 3 beans. We've got timers where it just helps people get mindful of how much they're talking, so that they can distill it and make it actually more powerful.
Right. Maybe talking too much isn't the right phrase. Maybe it's talking in a way that's not serving yourself or the group.
Right.
And so learning to be concise, learning to speak in a way that where what you want to communicate is being received on the other end. That's really important.
That's right. Why talk if you're not going to get received?
Right.
Yeah.
Learning to check in with what needs to be said right now. What do I feel called to say? What is God prompting me to say? There are lots of ways to get to that. So that takes us out of that kind of automatic ego sharing, to be more in touch with your true needs and the true needs of the whole group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, we hold that for the course of the group, we don't allow any kind of subgrouping. So, of course, we can't police this, but to really make the experience as valuable as it can be, we ask people not to speak about other people in the group outside their presence. So if you have something to say about somebody, you can use your journal to say it. You can go vent. If there's something really troubling, then you might come to one of us and say, this is really troubling me. I need 5 minutes, and we'll give you 5 minutes to figure out how to help you with it. But basically it's so rich and so important to bring that stuff to the group, even if you just bring it in your heart to the group. But to not gossip. Oh, did you see what so-and-so did last night? I couldn't believe that. It's like, that's not okay. Hold those feelings, bring them. Will help facilitate. If you need to actually express them, you may just need some time. And oftentimes there's a really important part, and we'll tell a story. I want to remember to tell a story that Scott Peck writes about that was very healing, that happened when somebody who could have gone and sort of discharged the energy somewhere else brought it to the group instead. And we also ask everyone to agree at the beginning that whatever is said in the group over the course of the week is held confidential. And by that, we mean that it's okay to go home and talk about one's own experience. It is not okay to disclose in any manner. You might say, well, there was one person who talked about this, and this is what came up for me, but no identifying information whatsoever, not
Right.
who they are, how old they are, what gender they are, whatever. No identifying information. And the main thing is, if you go home and you want to share something, that you share your experience, not somebody else's experience. So you get full reign on sharing your own experience, but not other people's. That's theirs. And it stays in a sacred space, honored in the group. And we'll have everybody agree to that before we start. So those are some of the safeguards.
Okay.
And then we're not promising that that there won't be some challenging moments, because you and I are just human too. And all of that we can take it and compost it and make beautiful things grow out of it. So that's our goal, of course. All right. Do you have any final words?
Well, we do have an application process for this.
Right.
And the form for that is on our website, so you can see specifically what it's about. But it's the question is, are we a good fit with each other? Are what we're up to is a good fit for what you up to in your life and who you are, and vice versa. And so what are the things that may or may not be a good fit between us and people that want to join us for the workshop?
I think that anyone who is in the midst of or very close to trauma that makes them understandably need a lot of protection,
Mm-hmm.
that we wouldn't advise this. It's like if you've been recently traumatized and haven't had a chance to really feel your full selfhood and power to take care of yourself again, then it wouldn't be good. And we wouldn't want to set you back in your healing process. Anybody who is going to, who is in active addiction to anything that they have concerns about going through some kind of withdrawal, that wouldn't be a good match either. We take the power of addiction very seriously, and with respect, and not to shame anybody, but just to, in fact, encourage them to find some freedom and not come and just have to go cold turkey off a daily pot smoking habit. Might be really, really challenging. So,
and the venue itself is got some strict rules in place about no alcohol, no drugs, no smoking, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there may be smoking outdoors.
Yeah.
But not indoors.
But the venue itself has those rules in place.
Yeah.
And it has them stand out as a venue compared to many others.
Right.
And people report that the experience there is so much better and deeper for them.
Yeah, so it's nice to know that, there's not a bar where a bunch of people are drinking heavily and partying when you're trying to do this really tender, wonderful, sacred, profound work.
Right.
So that's one of the really things that attracted us. We're very respectful of the power of internet and cell phone engagement when trying to go deep with personal or group work. And so we're asking people to trust us to have a way of people getting in touch with you if you need to be gotten in touch with for an emergency, and to give up your devices for the 4.5 days, so that it's not tempting to use that as an escape, and instead to turn to other people, to turn to the group, to turn to your own inner resources. And also just to have the delightful relief of not being interrupted 20 times a day, and to be able to really focus on oneself and have a break from the technology and kind of reset what could be. I mean, 20 years ago, this was not normal behavior to be looking at things all the time. So to kind of go back to, what was the DNA that I was actually born with, and how much of this information is actually overloading me, and I need to take better care of myself with regard to that. So it's giving people an experience of that as well.
Yeah.
In a supportive arena where you're not at home all by yourself trying to not watch, 5 hours of Netflix or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's probably a good idea not to take your phone into the hot springs plunge pool anyway, so.
What else? Anything else to wrap up?
Nope. We got 55 minutes of footage for you to edit.
Uh-oh. That's going to be hard. I think we need 2 versions.
Yeah.
A short version.
Yeah.
And then we'll have much of this. I think was very valuable.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
You can do just a Tim supercut where you get all the best things that I say.
Okay. Will do.